Hello, world of the internet. My name is Jon Farmer.
And I'm Joan Chandler.
And in about 5 minutes, we're going to start a presentation as part of the Neighbors, Friends, and Families webinar series about teaching healthy relationship skills to youth, to talk to you about Far From the Heart. And if I slouch, you'll see the title starting at this end, Far From the Heart. It's an interactive play developed by Sheatre, the company that Joan founded and that I have had the pleasure of working with and for. But we'll talk more about that in 5 minutes. So if you're just tuning in with your lunch, sit back, get comfortable, unwrap all of the crinkly wrapper paper things, and we're just going to hang out. If you are logging on in the next 5 minutes, if you're, hey, we've got somebody watching right now. So we've got someone watching. Welcome. My name is John. This is Joan. In about 5 minutes, we'll start this presentation. If you are logged on, just in the chat over at the side, or I guess maybe down at the bottom for you folks. It's showing up differently because we're the ones broadcasting. Just say hi, give us your name and where you're from so that we know who's in the virtual room. And if you're watching this after the fact, oh, hey, hello, Elsa. Thanks for joining us. And if you're watching this after the fact, then bear with us for the next 4 minutes, or even fast forward and save yourself 4 minutes of time. We are broadcasting currently from the Canadian Mental Health Association and Men's Program offices in Owen Sound, Ontario. Sheatre is an interactive arts company based in Grey Bruce, more specifically in Wolseley, but it's really snowy in Wolseley today because we're broadcasting this at the start of January.
So John and I were thinking, what could we do while you're while you're just getting set up and coming on?
And we thought that maybe we could play a game because Sheatre is an arts company. Who do we have? Oh, we've got folks from, oh, hey, Neighbors, Friends, and Family is posting about, resources right now. You'll see that ANOVA's number there. ANOVA's a great, really good organization based in London. So if you do need support over the course of this call, or if any of the things that we talk to you about, because we are going to be talking about relationship violence, sexual assault, and healthy relationships, if any of those things inspire you to speak to a professional, please contact ANOVA at the number that Neighbors, Friends, and Family have posted down there in the comments.
We'll bring this up again later, but you can also contact Kids Help Phone.
Yeah, if you're in the appropriate age range for
Yes,
the Kids Help Phone.
That's right, and that number is.
Yeah, we might even be able to share the Kids Help Phone number over here in the chat. So look for that.
Yeah.
We have 2 more minutes to.
By the way, the number is.
Oh.
1-800-668-6868.
Oh, there you go. 1-800-668-6868 for Kids Help Phone. You can also text them now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful thing. You can use your phone to get help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From all over.
Yeah. So I don't know what else you want to do while we're waiting for people to get on board.
So I'm going to throw the invitation out again. It looks like we have 6 people tuned in right now. If you are watching, just say hi, where you're from, and 1-800. The Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children has posted the Kids Help Phone number. Thank you so much. We've got 5 people live, so if you are watching live with us right now, just say hi in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from, and we'll start the conversation in about a minute.
Cool.
60 seconds even. Yeah.
We can count down.
Yeah. We could have a staring contest if you want. The painting behind us will win. It always does. Yeah. I'm just canvassing for bad jokes.
Yeah, are you really? Who did this painting?
That's by an Owen Sound-based artist named Kyle Haight.
H-A-I-G-H-T?
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Nicole. From Halton Women's Place.
Hi.
Oh, looking to bring it to Halton. Oh, amazing. If you're, we are currently booking for a tour in February. So,
the week of Valentine's Day.
And that's the only time that we're on the road with Far From the Heart. So feel free to send us a message either now or after the webinar, and we can tell you more about how to book the show in because we're only on the road for 1 week. And it's 12:05.
All right. So we can launch right in.
Yeah. So
I want to talk a little bit about Sheatre and who we are, and a little bit about the history of Far From the Heart, and then we're going to get into talking about how it works and how we use theater as a way of beginning crucial conversations with young people about violence in relationships and things that they can do in order to avoid that kind of violence.
And how we as adults working with young people and adults just trying to start these conversations more generally can use the arts and the kind of framework that Far From the Heart uses to start and support these conversations in a holistic and healthy way.
Mm-hmm. So Sheatre was formed in 1985 in Huron County and then moved to the Owen Sound area in 92. What we do, we're a theater company that works with people in the community to create plays and other forms of art like music and visual art that is about a particular issue that they feel is really close to them, that they would love to find solutions for. And we create these pieces that reflect the problems that they've experienced and then take them out to their community, their peers, and present it as an interactive piece so that we can together find solutions for the problems that are presented in the play, or the problems that come up and are mentioned in the music or in the visual art. So we create these dialogues with people in the community. Although we are based in Grey Bruce, we travel all over the place. We toured across Saskatchewan. We're planning to go out to the Maritimes soon, and we've worked in the States and in England as well as all across Ontario. I'm the artistic director of Sheatre and its founder. We've reached about 200,000 rural people in that period of time. Small audiences pretty much each time that we go out, because the work that we do is intimate and we want to keep the intimacy in the discussions that we have. So audiences range from about sometimes 10 and up to 200 people. And the kinds of topics that we've covered are really vast. However, a number of years ago, I was on the board of directors at the Women's Center here in Grey Bruce, and over the 6 years that I was there, I've done a lot of work about violence against women over the years, but while I was the chair of the board there, I really began to see more intimately, more closely, the kinds of things that were coming up for real women in our community, young and old. And one of the things that we noticed was that there was the second generation of young women who were now coming to the shelter. They had been there with their moms as kids, and they were coming as adults. And so the conversation began at the Women's Center. Okay, how can we help these young women? What can we do in order to help them to understand how relationships can function in a positive way? How can we reach teens? While I was at the Women's Center, I did not get involved in using theater in that way. However, right after that, I was aware that there was something going on in the community, and I went and I spoke with people. Can we have a conversation about sexual assault? Can we have a conversation about rape? And people were very timid to do that. Young people particularly that I spoke with said, we can't do that. And we were talking in a very small group. It took a while, but we began to have that conversation with them using theater. And Simon Malbagat and I worked with a group of young people from across the region, from the Bruce Peninsula and the Owen Sound area and everything in between, to create this play that became Far From the Heart. We improvised scenes about dating violence and sexual assault. We improvised scenes about the kinds of things that led to that kind of behavior happening. And we only, in fact, touch upon some of the nuts of that. But it's the beginning of a conversation that we created with the play. That was 11 years ago now. 12 years old.
13. 2019, Joan.
Oh,
that happened in 2006.
Was it? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
So it was just our 11th tour that we did. Yeah, but what we find is that the conversation hasn't, it's changed, but the center of it is the same. And when we presented the first time to a teen audience, it was the young people who created the play who presented it locally, and the audiences were just like, wow, I can't believe we're having this conversation. And they cheered so loudly. What did they cheer about? Far from the Heart is a forum theater piece. So we present the play, and I'll tell you a little bit about the story, we will in a sec. We present the play that is full of problems. We call it the problem play. And there are no solutions presented at all. It's about 20 minutes long. People see what the complications are. And then we come back and we present certain scenes again where key decisions are made. And we show the beginning of that scene and ask the audience, the moment that you see something that is really bothering you, the moment that you see somebody being oppressed, somebody being made to think, feel, or do something other than what they want to do, then raise your hand, shout out, stop. And then we stop the action there, invite the person to come up on the stage and try a different action, a different behavior. So can they change the scene for the better? They actively try that on stage, and that's forum theater. There are one or two people that we have on stage called the Joker, and those people facilitate the onstage discussion. They help the audience members to come up and intervene in the action and make the change, and they help to briefly analyze what's happened. What change happened? Was it effective? What was different? Those kinds of things are asked, and the audience gets involved in a discussion of what their peer, that's the word, what their peer has done on stage. So it becomes a conversation in action on stage that is then opened up to a conversation with people in the audience about this rather tricky situation.
Yeah, situation and series of topics. And in that way, in the course of, so for Far From the Heart specifically, we're in the auditorium for about 90 minutes. The problem play, it takes about 20 minutes. And for the next hour, we're there doing the process that Joan just described, breaking the scenes down, giving the audience a chance to talk about, to stop what they want to stop, and then to try to change the outcome in the storyline in a way that hopefully leads to a less violent and positive, safe outcome for all of the people involved. And one of the beautiful things that the Joker does, they act, as Joan said, like a host for that, is that they helped us to encourage the audience towards the action and the types of thought and types of interaction that we would want them to have. So it lets them model that behavior and gives the audience a chance to have what we call a rehearsal for reality. The play Far From the Heart, in that 20 minutes, talks about a lot of problematic things. The first scene deals with misogynistic language and violent language. There are 4 characters in the play. The play takes place on the night of a big party with these high school characters. We change the ages when we're presenting to audiences that are older than high school, just to make that more relatable. Again, because relationship violence, sexual violence, gendered violence doesn't have an age cap on it.
No.
We know that. And so the power dynamics that we're embodying with these characters are universal, even if the ages of the characters aren't the ages of everyone in the audience.
And it's a universal story, regardless of the age of the people. We found that to be true. So let's tell them a little bit about the story.
So for the first scene, it starts as you would expect the night of a party to start for folks. The two main male characters and two main female characters are preparing for the night of the party.
So the guys are Warren and Adam, and it's Adam's house that the party is taking place at. And the two guys are watching video on TV or computer or whatever it is, but they're watching something that presents a woman there on the screen.
So one of the characters objectifies the female character on stage in the course of the conversation that follows, as they're also preparing for that party. They're exhibiting a lot of those toxic masculine traits. They're bragging about drinking.
I tap that.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, and they're drinking, yeah.
They're drinking heavily. They're bragging about how much they can drink. They're betting about which one of them is going to have sex first. One of the male characters, Warren, says that he did have sex, and that so he won the bet. So that's a scene where the audience also gets to intervene later on. While we see the male characters on stage, the female characters are in a kind of mirrored scene there, as Felicity and Rachel are getting ready for the party there. Felicity being Warren's girlfriend. And Felicity specifically it feels like she's not as mature as Rachel is. She's less secure going to parties. She's trying to fit in, and in that relationship,
and she is younger.
And she is younger.
Yeah.
And so we see them talking about the sexual experimentation that Felicity and Warren have had. Rachel ends up encouraging Felicity to wear a red dress that's depicted behind us on this banner as well, and that red dress serves as a flashpoint, as a symbol through the rest of the performance, as a lightning rod for all those kinds of victim blaming trends and all that kind of judgment that women are so often prone to.
It is probably not a dress that any girl would ever wear to a party. Yeah. But it is a symbol of that particular problem. So Felicity now is going to the party, and she shows off the dress when she gets there to her boyfriend, who is shocked at the change in her image, and he wants to put a coat on her and control her. And she really would rather he didn't do that, and he's getting aggressive, very aggressive in his language, and very aggressive physically with her. Adam, the host of the party, ultimately steps in, and
Warren, feeling threatened by another male showing attention to his girlfriend, they start a fight that results in Warren leaving. That leaves Felicity, Rachel, and Adam at the party with all the other imaginary characters, where then the host of the party, Adam, encourages a lot of heavy drinking. Felicity ends up intoxicated. Her friend decides to leave the party and go to another party, and leaves Felicity isolated and intoxicated in a stranger's house.
Adam seems to be the fellow who is going to rescue her. She trusts him, and he invites her to get away from the crowd and the noise, because she's obviously looking tired. They go to his bedroom, they have a little bit of chit-chat, and end up lying on the bed, and Adam takes advantage of her and he rapes her. The next scene is the day afterward.
The final scene of the play.
Yeah, and we hear what each of the characters is feeling the next day. There's a range of emotions, and ultimately ends up with Felicity blaming herself and wishing that others would believe her, and acknowledges, I've been raped. It hits very hard. So that's, are there a few problems in this play?
So many problems in this play.
Yeah, there are. It's very loaded. And then we go into the second part of the show, which is the interventions. We begin with the boys and their conversation, the young men. And
we run the play chronologically,
yeah,
allowing the audience to stop when there's something that they want to change. No two performances are exactly the same, because the audience is getting up on stage. By getting up on stage, we're giving them a chance to enter the fictional world of the play, to have the characters and their story to reference. So if there are people in the audience with lived experience, or with a friend with lived experience, and they want to talk about why these issues are important and how people should actually be treated, they don't have to self-disclose. They don't have to out their friend. They have the characters and the character situation to talk about. And they get to both practice bystander intervention if they're replacing characters who are not in a direct conflict situation within the play, but they also get to practice self-advocacy and start conversations about any of the range of topics that we've described so far. You can watch a interactive film version of the play at farfromtheheart.com. You can also see a live stream of a performance in both English or French from our most recent tour in the fall of 2018 to see what that actually looks like with a real audience and people getting up and intervening.
We also do present in French. C'est aussi disponible en français, loin du cœur, and it's also going to be touring in February and further on. The thing about this play, I have training as an art and play therapist, and when I began this particular production, I knew that it needed to be done responsibly, that we needed a container for this to happen. If I brought in a play like this to a school, to a young audience, without any kind of preparation or any kind of basket to hold it, it would be like, you know, hitting somebody with a truck. You know, it would be a very frightening and intimidating experience for many people. So even as we developed the play, we had people working with us who are counselors in the area, and they helped our participants in the workshop to feel comfortable with the topics and to have those conversations in a safe way. We want to translate that to the audiences that we visit. So keeping that model, we work with people in every area where we present the play, people who are a part of the social services community, justice, or counseling in some way. And Jon has been the person over the last 3 years setting up those connections where we've been touring. So
that's the outline of the play. Now you've got a sense of what we bring up and what we talk about. So I'm going to lay out for you right now how the beliefs that lead us to do the work in the way that we do it, and to talk a little bit more about the structure of how we do that work. Talking about relationship violence, about sexual violence is difficult. Talking about relationships is difficult. And so we're really invested not just in coming in and opening up a can of worms and tossing the worms all over the place. We're interested in doing this in a way that makes it possible to open up that can of worms in a safe and responsible way, to make sure that people aren't being shocked by the conversation, so that they're prepared for it ahead of time, and so that there are resources on hand to support them. We believe really, really strongly that it is possible to talk about almost anything if you do it in the right way and if you have the proper supports on hand. So as we work with schools and community presenters ahead of time, we train the teachers and the adults working with that group, because we recognize that even adults are not necessarily fluent or have the same base level of knowledge around how to talk about relationship violence.
And some people are not comfortable doing that.
Yeah, for a full variety of reasons. If we're going into a high school, the math teacher might really not feel comfortable talking about these things, while the phys ed teacher talks about this multiple times every year and is totally comfortable. So
or when we're presenting in a community situation, there may not be people who are really familiar with that kind of conversation with young people. So we want to prepare the adults to help and guide the young people in this discussion.
And those adults and those specifically teachers are also really important, because they then prepare the students. So we provide a background baseline of materials. We have a training video to make sure that folks understand what's going to be happening on the day of the play, that they have links to resources, that if they don't know what victim blaming is, then we need them to know what victim blaming is before they see the play, so that they don't broadcast maybe victim blaming beliefs or behaviors as they're working with those youth. And they then lead a series of activities before we have the day of the play, to give the people who are going to be in the audience a chance to begin to examine their own beliefs.
So there's a teacher's manual that has these activities in it.
Yeah.
And there's a range of them that teachers can select from.
Yeah. Generally, it starts with a personal reflection activity, then a group reflection activity, and then a reminder about how we want to work in what live theater means, how to treat each other and the performers during the play. Afterwards, then after the performance, 90-minute performance, we then break the audience up into smaller groups. When we're working with schools, they generally go back to their classes, and we lead a post-show discussion. In fact, we don't lead that, but we partner with experts from the community who work in, as Joan said earlier, justice, sexual assault services, mental health counselors, public health nurses, guidance counselors from the school, folks who work in the VAW world, because we know that they've got the local expertise, they've got the professional and personal experience to again then lead those conversations in ways that are safe and helpful. And they also help the audience to learn and to see that these are things that people can talk about, that you can talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships. You can talk about relationship violence. You can talk about sexual assault in ways that acknowledge that our entire communities need support. In that final scene, when we're going back through in the interactive portion of the play, we ask the audience what each character needs, what the bystanders need, what the perpetrator needs, and what the survivor needs.
And where can they go for help? How can they get these resources? What are the resources in their own community where they can get what they need in order to heal and grow and learn?
So we then have that follow-up half-hour conversation with those smaller groups in situations where an organization doesn't have the room, like the physical space in their building, to split off into smaller groups. We lead that as more of a Q&A and Q, so with facilitators up on stage, so that again the audience gets to see that there are resources in their community.
That was really important to me, the connection between community supports and the kids, the people in the audience, whoever they might be, because often that's just some strange body that's out there, you know, that maybe young people have heard of, maybe not. And it might be the first time that they've ever met anybody who works in that sector. When I was at the Women's Center, it was really clear that there were, at that time, barriers for those people to be able to have those conversations. That's changing, or has changed. However, it can still be very difficult to make those connections happen, and to make it possible for the young people in the audience to meet these people. They're real people. You can really talk to them. And
it's amazing. I've had the privilege of also being a facilitator on tour for the past 3 years, and to see people in school, like teenagers in high schools, who might not even know that there's a guidance department, or might not even know that there's a counselor that they can talk to in the school. I often ask groups of audience members in those breakout conversations afterwards whether or not relationships or sex are things that their peers talk about. And by and large, the answer is no. And for those of us who work in these fields in different capacities, most of us clearly see that even though conversations about sexual violence, conversations about positive sexuality are more prevalent than they were a decade or 2 decades ago, we still live in a society that shames people who experience sexual violence, that shames men for a whole bunch of reasons if they express vulnerability, especially if a male is a survivor of sexual violence. That we know that slut shaming is a thing. We know that victim blaming in so many ways is prevalent. And we're trying to start these positive conversations in a culture that doesn't support them. And so we, with Far From the Heart, create a space in which we normalize those conversations. On this tour, we had support people in the weeks or days after a performance get in touch to say, thank you for bringing the show in, because someone who had experienced sexual violence and had never disclosed, had never reached out for support, after seeing the show, felt like they could do that. They knew that there were resources available, and they disclosed and sought peer support or counseling for the first time.
Far From the Heart, Loin du Coeur can trigger people in the audience. That's another really important reason for having those resources there. When the show is happening, the audience isn't captive. They don't have to stay in their seats. If somebody is triggered or disturbed in some way, they're welcome to leave. But we don't want to have those people leave with nowhere to go. So we set a safe place up where they can go to, and one of those counselors who is present, because there's more than one, will go out and speak to the person who has left. And if they need to talk to somebody, then they have an advocate that they can be with, and they can go to a safe place and have that conversation.
And we don't just have people by the doors who chase people out. We announce specifically at the beginning of the production that there are community support people available. We ask them to introduce themselves, and we let the audience members know that they're there and that they will be checking with people who leave. We also make sure that the presenters know ahead of time that if there are people with lived experience in their community who aren't ready to be in an audience talking about those things, that's okay. And organizations and schools generally arrange for a separate space if there are people with lived experience who aren't ready for that at that time.
Yeah. You were mostly mentioning high school, but the play is for grade 7 and up. Our actors are young people. I don't know if you can see that without it being too shiny, but they're people that they can relate to. And sometimes people in the audience will come up to them after the show to talk to them. And then our actors will guide them to a resource person that they can continue that conversation with.
Far from the Heart is really designed, and this style of theater is designed to start conversations and to do that in responsible ways.
And entertaining ways.
Yeah, and engaging ways. Yeah. So that it's not an after-school special where everything is bad and then it all works out at the end, where there's a clear right perspective and wrong perspective. We're really clear that
there are no right answers.
Yeah.
There's just answers that people are pitching. You know, it's a peer education program.
And it's also an opportunity for the adults or the service providers working with an audience to find out where that audience is in their knowledge of these things, where their beliefs are. It's been amazing to see people from grade 7 all the way up be super articulate and really firm in their beliefs, to be really strong in their belief of the importance of respect and nonviolence and healthy relationships, who can speak to that. It's also been really powerful for me as a facilitator the last couple of years to see audience members in those small groups then support each other. If someone, even in a small group discussion, says, hey, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship and it took me a really long time to get out of that, and to have another teenager who maybe they only know from 1 or 2 classes say, hey, that happened to me too, like, standing up for your boundaries is okay, and that's good, and maybe here's a support that's in our community that really helped me.
One of the other neat things about the play is that when you're watching it, it's about violence against women, and a play has a real strong emotional thread to it that people can get involved. You know, like any kind of movie or TV show or entertainment of that kind, you get emotionally engaged so that the story can be seen from whatever perspective the audience member brings to it, whether they are whether they're LGBTQ, whatever kind of orientation they are, they can recognize this and they can step in, and it can be a part of their story too. It can reflect their reality.
We also believe very strongly that this play is about the power dynamics and those issues. We know that relationship and sexual violence is a gendered thing,
power,
and it's about power, right? So we do our very best to balance that knowledge, right? That women identified and non-binary folks are more likely to experience relationship and sexual violence, but also that relationship and sexual violence can happen to anyone. And one of the ways that we make it possible for people to see themselves on stage is by not controlling who comes up to replace which character. So if
never know who's going to come up.
So if someone is stopping the scene in which the character of Warren is trying to control his girlfriend Felicity to force her to put on a sweater and leave the party with him so that people don't look at her, to really be controlling in that way, the captain of the football team might step up and take Felicity's place and say no. And then we also get to have a conversation about how these dynamics exist in any relationship, and we get to talk about how it's easier for someone who's 6'3" and 300 pounds to maybe hold physical space than someone who has a different body.
Now,
And
the thing is that they bring their own ideas that are very, very moving onto the stage. They become emotionally engaged as well, and that's wonderful. When it really is clicking between the characters on the stage, it's just wonderful. There was one instance in which our actor was completely taken aback by a 12-year-old girl who, teeny little girl who stood up to him and spoke to him in a very forthright, heart-to-heart way. And, that can happen. Doesn't matter who you are, how, doesn't matter. It can happen, and people can really strike a chord so that it goes from far from the heart, loin du cœur, to, oh man, we're right at the center of the heart. This is really speaking very strongly. We've performed not just in schools, as I was saying, also in community centers, Native friendship centers, boys and girls clubs, anywhere, any kind of group where young people gather is a place where we can help to facilitate this discussion. People who work in the sector have responded very, very positively to this. The teachers have discussed how it has made it easier for them to deliver the curriculum in sex education and in other kinds of parts of the curriculum. When we began this last tour, we were asked, well, oh boy, they changed the sex education curriculum in Ontario. What are you going to do? Well, we began before that change.
2006.
And regardless of which curriculum it is, it fits. It fits in the curriculum in Saskatchewan. It fits in with curriculum, regardless of where you are. It can be made to talk about the things that you as teachers or that you as community activists want to talk about. It can suit the program.
And we believe really strongly in the importance of conversation. I'm going to say that again and again and again. And because people can't advocate for themselves if they've never been given a chance to realize that advocacy is possible, to think about what a healthy relationship means to them. And we do this in so many other parts of our society, right? Like, we give people driver's ed before we make them drive on their own. Even that classroom portion that says, by the way, stop, like a stop sign means stop. Yeah. And
there is an organization, actually I think it's here at the CMHA, where they do a youth program. And from this work, the idea of stopping the action and then talking about what it is and figuring out what that is, this particular organization created little stop signs. And if something was bothering someone in their whatever it is that they're doing, they just hold the stop sign up and then they can have a conversation.
Which is such a key concept if we're talking about consent and if we're talking about healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And not just that it's my right to say stop when I'm uncomfortable, but also to create a conversation with up to, and for Far From the Heart, we present to audiences of up to 200 people. But to have those people in the room all be exposed to the idea that, hey, when someone says stop, we need to stop.
We all do.
And whether they're saying stop verbally or with their actions, or if you're not getting a clear green light to go, that means stop.
The scene in the bedroom is only one of those places where we can stop. We can stop anywhere in the play. We can stop when they're having a conversation early on. We can stop when they're, hey, have a drink. We can stop a whole lot of things. It's hard to do. And so this provides, as John was saying, the rehearsal for that to happen, the rehearsal for reality.
So one of the groundwork skills that Far From the Heart and arts-based conversation facilitation like we do, one of the places that's really valuable is developing both the empathy skills to recognize what someone else is feeling and to respond to that, and also to create more of a common understanding around what consent is even outside of a sexual conversation or a sexual relationship, because those skills are important. And if we don't have a chance to actively develop them as a community, then where do people learn? If not, they learn by trial and error. And the cost of that trial and error is higher than we think is appropriate for our communities and societies to pay.
What we know, statistically, let's talk a little bit about statistics. 51%, I think it's still that, of Canadian women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lives.
Yeah. And when we break that down to sexual violence, and I know that some of these statistics have been repeated in previous webinars that Neighbours, Friends, and Family have hosted, but 1 in 3 Canadian women will experience some form of sexual violence, and 1 in their lifetime, and 1 in 6 Canadian men will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. The reason that Far From the Heart starts with the scenes that just have the characters talking is because we know that our conversations and our beliefs and our relationship, our
attitudes,
attitudes and friendships and peer relationships impact how we behave in other spheres of our lives. And if we can't recognize what respect looks like in our friendships, if we can't get to a place where we feel comfortable, I'll speak as a man as a male identified human for a moment. If among my relationships with men, if I'm sitting around with my male friends and someone's objectifying women, if I don't realize that it's okay for me to say stop, then and to point out how that's disrespectful or why that's not why I am uncomfortable when he talks about women in that way, why I am uncomfortable when he talks about sex in the way that he's talking about sex, if it's oppressive, if I can't say stop as a man and change the male culture that I participate in, then I can't do anything to impact the wider relationship violence and the gendered violence that I know goes beyond just the conversations that happen in locker rooms. Let's maybe tag
that's
that
one
idea.
place. That's one place, yeah. And it is a hard conversation to have. This, in fact, is one of the hardest interventions in the play, is when the two guys are talking like that and the one is trying to break that attitude. It's really challenging. But this, have you ever had a conversation like that before? We ask the guys, no, but it's a place to start. Another statistic, 86% of the sexual assault incidents that are reported to police, 86% of those are with girls under the age of 18. So that's, again, another really crucial reason for working with young people. We want to be able to break that statistic down.
Yeah.
At the Women's Center, the objective is to put ourselves out of business. And you may have that same objective at the organization that you're at. So if we start younger and can help these conversations to happen.
And in the final few minutes that we have together, art is really powerful again, because I don't have to talk about myself.
Yes.
I can talk about the characters on the stage and be talking about the issues without becoming a target myself or having to disclose things that I don't want to disclose, regardless of who I am in that audience. There are still barriers to these conversations. It's been really interesting in the past few years to see the wider cultural conversation change as we present the play, and to see the play remain so relevant. When we were on tour in 2017, it was right as the Me Too hashtag was breaking. On a previous year's tour, it was when Jian Ghomeshi's, the allegations and charges were being brought against Jian Ghomeshi for his sexual violence. The Steubenville case broke while we were on tour. And all of these instances are helping our society and culture, hopefully, to move in a more nonviolent, more equitable direction. But we're not there yet, and we're not going to be there for several generations. And so we need to keep finding ways to have these conversations, and art is a really powerful way to do that. One of the follow-up activities that we recommend in our teacher's education package is even to just have students analyze a film or a song to see what relationship dynamics they find at play there, because we know that in so many forms of popular music, for the last 70 years, if not longer, unhealthy relationship dynamics have been present. So having the practice with Far From the Heart and analyzing art that way and thinking about relationship dynamics then gives people an opportunity to build those skills in other places in their lives.
I'd like to direct you to a couple of links that are going to appear here at the end of our conversation today. One is the Far From the Heart website.
It's already up.
Oh, look at that. So on that website, there is the interactive film adaptation of the play. It can be used all on its own, and people all around the world have done that, so that you can have either you can watch it with another person, you can watch it alone, you can watch it in a classroom, and go on the journey. And it's kind of a choose your own ending for each scene. And there are several options there where you can see more positive outcomes to the original drama. If you follow the one path, you see the original problem play. Also on that website are the Teacher's Educational Resource Kit, Facilitator's Manual, links to other resources, and some interventions that were done by young people are also there, so you can see what they have done. On the Sheatre website, sheatre.com, we have, as John was mentioning earlier, we live streamed 2 of the plays earlier this year, and those are available to be watched. One is with a class from a local public school, and the other is a more broad audience of older people. But you can see how it works. And for those
productions as well, it was a live stream, so we had folks sending suggestions in from across the province, which was really powerful.
Yeah, and then they were acted out by people who we had on board, who we called avatars, who took the place of the people who messaged us to tell us their ideas. So you can see how it works with people in a classroom or in a community setting. You can also see other kinds of work that we do with adults, including elders, and there's a lot of other information on the Sheatre website about what we do and who we engage with.
Yeah. Pretending that people aren't experiencing these issues doesn't work.
No.
We know that young people are experiencing sexual violence and relationship violence, and people of all ages are experiencing the same. And if we can't give people the tools to talk about that, then we can't give them the tools to reach out for help, and they need that. So we believe really strongly in that. That's why we do this work. If you want to find out more about that work, visit any of the links that we've posted. If you want to, develop a forum theater play about any issue that's in your community, we can help direct you to artists who can help make that happen as well. It's been a pleasure to be online with you right now. We've got about 12 minutes left.
You might have questions.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like we've got folks putting comments there into the side. So we're going to open this up for questions right now. If you have questions, if you have thoughts about anything that we've said.
I have to get closer to read this. So pardon me while I get a little bit closer.
Okay, those links are up there as well.
Yes, you're right, Sarah. There does need to be change, and it's a courageous thing to do. This is a very brave thing that we invite young people to do, and we try to do it in a way that can facilitate. And the thing is that we see change happen in the audience when we're presenting this. We see people having those aha moments, and we can hear them having the conversations with each other afterwards and making real decisions for change.
Or turning around in the audience to say, hey, I disagree with that thing that you've just said for these reasons.
Yeah.
And before we've even broken up into those smaller group discussions, which we do because we acknowledge that not everyone's comfortable talking in front of their entire peer group.
And they aren't even necessarily comfortable talking in a small group.
Yeah. But even in that moment, even in those moments, we see that conversation starting. This kind of thing doesn't solve an issue on its own, but it helps to create an environment in which issues can be talked about and then addressed.
And we can help people who are in the community who want to address these things to do it in a way that is engaging.
And I guess to specifically again with that final scene, to recognize that perpetrators also need help. And that there are resources for perpetrators to change so that they don't hurt people again. We really encourage accountability. We have that discussion about how even the character of the perpetrator needs help and needs to change, and that if he's going to be accountable, then he needs to make sure that he never assaults someone again, and that he's part of positive change to make sure that doesn't happen for anyone.
Alan, I thank you for saying that you love this work. We love it too. We're really passionate about it, and we do have a quite a group of artists, an amazing group of artists who work with us on this issue and other issues. Yeah.
And in the comments, we've got a question there about where Far From the Heart and the Mind Dakar are going on tour in February. We're just on tour for 1 week around Valentine's Day. We'll be down around the Niagara region and up into the Simcoe region. So and with points in between, and we're touring with a bilingual cast as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
and we have spots open. So if this is something that is of interest to you, get in touch with us. Bookings at farfromtheheart.com. No, bookings at sheatre.com. Sheatre. Bookings at sheatre.com if you're interested in potentially booking a show or a workshop.
Yeah. One thing that I've really taken away from this work, and
we're also further to where are we going to be touring? We're planning a tour of the Maritimes. So if you're out there in the Maritimes or you know somebody there, and we also have interest out west, so let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were going to say?
I was going to say. It's been really powerful for me as someone who's had the privilege of having those conversations with young people over the past few years in this context, to see how capable they are of having these conversations. And I think that often as adults, we don't give young people enough credit for their lived experience, for their perspectives, for their voices. And if we want to live in a world where people feel empowered to use their voice and to talk about difficult things, then we need to model that as adults working with young people as well. And we need to encourage the young people that we work with and that are in our lives as generally as possible, and acknowledge that that there are ways to have age-appropriate conversations no matter what age you are.
You talk about giving credit. I would like to give credit to the Ontario Arts Council. This last 3 years, we've been very fortunate to be funded by an Ontario program called It's Never Okay, an action plan to stop sexual violence and harassment in Ontario. We're also funded by, and have been repeatedly by, local unions, including the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario and their various branches, and a variety of others that are too many to mention here. But without them, without that kind of support, it wouldn't be possible. And because of their support, we're able to offer this to the community in an affordable and accessible way.
Yeah. There's a question here from Alan about whether or not we've created, Alan says, have you created a play on perpetrators and how they can be supported and what they may be suffering through? I ask because there's a stigma around what a perpetrator is. We don't have a production specifically about that. Although, yet. It's perpetually a yet. We're open to partnering with community organizations. And we know that, so personally I work also with the men's program in Owen Sound, which delivers PAR programs and positive parenting programs. And that work certainly has deepened my knowledge around healthy masculinities work, and really reinforced for me personally that we need to be doing more around healthy relationship education earlier in people's lives. I can't tell you how many guys have graduated from that program and in their final remarks said, I wish I'd learned this when I was in high school. And so I highly recommend that any of us who are in the position to advocate for our local school boards and schools and organizations to have healthy relationship programming as early as possible. But yeah, maybe we need to apply for special funding to work with guys who have gone through PAR programs. And certainly when we say perpetrator, we mean someone who's violent in a relationship, someone who has been abusive, and whether that's emotional abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse, they all need to be addressed, and all of those behaviors behaviors need to be reformed for sure.
We recognize certainly that there are perpetrators in our audience, and we talk about, you know, what is it that this person needs and where can they go, and we learn about the local resources. Great idea, though, Alan, to work with a group of young men to discuss this. It is indeed often a gap in many communities.
And it's a talking point that comes up too, like whether the character of Adam, or who perpetrates the sexual violence, or the character of Warren, who is emotionally and physically abusive, whether they know that what they're doing is abuse. And that is a topic for conversation that I'm sure goes beyond the 5 minutes that we have left in your lunch hour. But yeah.
It could be a good conversation for a subsequent talk, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, neighbors, friends, and family. Speaking of neighbors, friends, and family, thank you so much for making it possible for us to talk about this work and to talk about the issues that this work addresses on this wonderful platform of your social media page. If you're watching right now, you're not currently following or haven't liked Neighbors, Friends, and Family, Ending Domestic Violence Together on Facebook, please do, because they do great work and they have lots of resources to share from a variety of community partners.
And indeed, about a variety of issues. Sheatre also has a show about elder abuse, and we work with our local chapter and people who've been trained through the organization, and they're a wonderful group to work with.
Are there any more questions as we watch the clock and prepare to sign off? If you do have any questions and you haven't and you aren't familiar with Facebook Live, there is a comment section that you'll see and that you can type comments into, likely underneath your video, and then that'll show up at the side for us and we can respond to those.
If you have any questions and you're watching after this is live, what is that called?
It's just called a video at that point.
Good word for it. If you do have any questions, you can get in touch with us, Sheatre@sheatre.com, to ask any questions that you might have about the work that we do, the company that we're with, and I can get you in touch too with John.
And if you are in the London area, in the comments you'll see the number for Nova as well as Kids Help Phone. If talking about these things has affected you in such a way that you need someone to talk to right now in more of an anonymous or a professional capacity, please check those numbers out. Communities across Ontario also have crisis lines run by local women's centers, and if you want to get engaged more widely with preventing gender violence, check out your local Violence Against Women Community Coordinating Committee as well. And Alan, on that point of perpetrators, Changing Ways in London is a fantastic organization. If you are watching in the London area, get in touch with Tim Kelly there to talk about positive masculinities work.
Thank you all very, very much for being with us this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah. I am so glad that you tuned in.
Indeed.
Have a great day, everybody. There were some comments there. I stopped the ending of the video to read the comments, but that's okay.